Hello, in this video I'm going to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour of how to create a code in NVivo. So this is for if you're in a hurry and just need to get going. But if you're looking for a bit more detail, including tips and tricks for managing and organising your codes, stay tuned as I will cover those later in the video. So I'm going to start the video at the point where you have your data that you want to be coded, and this is often in the form of an interview transcript, which is what I've got here, but it may also take the form of images, survey data, and various other forms of data. But you also should have an idea of how you want to go about your coding for you to use this video. If you're not sure about either of these things, do take a look at some of our other resources which might help to give you some guidance on that. So there are lots of ways that I could approach coding. One of the first decisions is whether I want to develop codes as I go and generate them from the data. This might also be termed inductive coding. Or whether I want to have a set of codes set up before I start, which I can then code back to. And this might be termed deductive coding. It's actually not uncommon for researchers to use a mixture of both types of coding. What I'm going to show you first is how to create a code directly from the transcript. So let's say my research is about life as a PhD student. So in that research, I want to capture the snippets of information that relate to what it might be to have to live as a PhD student. So here are my interviews. So I'm just going to go to the first interview. And I notice that for the first interview, they talk about getting up early in the morning and getting to their laptop by 7 AM. So I might think, well, how does that help to answer my question about what it's like to live as a PhD student? I might think, well, actually, that would count as sort of perhaps a daily routine. So I want to code this as daily routine. So what I do is just highlight the section of text that I want to use. I then can go up to the circle here at the top of the screen and select code selection. And then as you can see, I'm starting from scratch, so I have no codes already available to me. So I'm going to create a new top level code and I'm going to call that daily routine and code selection to the new code. And you can see a little green bar pops up to tell me that I've done that. And can't remember whether that same bar comes up in the NVivo 12 version, but you can usually tell that you have coded that section of data. So I'm using NVivo 20 for this particular presentation. So I'll show you this again. So let's see, what else can we see here? They also use an app which helps them to keep track of how many hours they spend working on a day. So that's probably not so much routine, but maybe it's I think it's maybe a strategy that they might use. So I'm just going to highlight, I have an app, and this time I'm going to right click and code selection. It does exactly the same job, just depends which way you prefer to do it. And I don't want to code to daily routine. I want to create a new top level code, and I'm going to call this one strategy. Strategy that they use in their PhD life. So I'm going to code selection to new code. And again, you can see that go in there. Okay, so that's a couple of codes that I've got. Another way that I might code from the data is a term called NVivo coding, which is actually using the words that they've written. So let's have a look what I might want to have as NVivo code. I'm quite interested in this feeling of I am not doing it right. And I think that actually having the voice of the person there is quite important. So I'm going to choose this for an NVivo code. And to do that, I can again go up to code. Instead of going code selection, I can go code NVivo. And as you can see, it's now coded to, that has become a code in its own right. You can also do that same job of NVivo coding by highlighting it and coming down to this sort of squash diamond shape and clicking that. I won't do it again because I don't want two codes of the same thing, but that would be how you can do it quickly as well. So you might also ask, how do I keep track? How do I know what I have coded? And if you, as you can see, it's not quite clear what I have done or not so far. Well, NVivo has some quite useful tools for this. They have coding stripes, which when turned on, I'll show you in a second. I'm going to turn it on for the selected items of the codes that I'm using. And these are here. And I'm going to say OK. And I can see that therefore I get coding stripes down the side showing me which area I've coded and to what code. But I find it a little bit hard to see it from coding stripes for me personally, because it sort of just gives you this bar, whereas I actually want to know which section. So what you can also do is go to the highlighter bar, and again you can go for all coding, but I tend to go for selected items, codes, and select OK. And now you can see that not only do I know what it's been coded to, which I can see down the side, but I also have exactly which piece of text I have actually coded. So these are these two tools at the top. You've got coding stripes, which look like sort of three vertical bars, and one which is our highlighter. And they can help you to just keep track of where and what you've coded. And when you're deciding on how much to code, that is a personal choice. Some people prefer to code to, I think it's sometimes referred to as lumpers, and they might code a whole paragraph. Others might be described as splitters and do just short phrases. I'm probably more of a splitter type, but it's whatever works for you. And I will show you in a later part of the video how you can see, if you've only coded a small bit, how you can actually refer back to where that's coming from and see the rest of the context if you need to. So don't worry too much if you only code a small bit. So that's the basics of coding as you go. So if that's all you need, then feel free to stop the video here. But in the next part, I'm going to talk a bit about how you might go on to organise your codes, or if you decided to use a more deductive approach in the first place, to show you how you might set up your code to start with. So to do this, we will go to the coding tab. So you can see on this left column, under your data section, there is also a coding section. So we're going to go to codes. And I can make this a bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing just by clicking on this little bar, and you should get a little arrow icon and be able to move it out. So as you can see, the codes we have created are now here. So we have daily routine. This is my NVivo code. I'm not doing it right. And here is my other code strategy. But you may have had this as completely blank, or you might want to add a new code to the ones you've got. And to do this, I can go to create code, and then I can give a name. So let's think what else I might want to have in my coding. Ooh, can't think of something now. I'm going to say tasks. So tasks of a person doing a PhD. So task a person. You don't have to fill in the description, but it can be very helpful, especially if you're going on to make a code book, and and if you're collaborating, a code book is particularly helpful because it helps you to ensure that you and other coders are understanding it as the same thing. So there we have new code has come up as tasks. Similarly to before, you can also do this with a right click and go new code. And I'm just going to type in PhD for now, just to show you. And you should see that come up here as well. Now, if I want to do a bit of organizing, I can also do that from this section. So I'm not doing it right. That might actually come in as a sort of a feeling, I guess. So actually I might want to create a new code, which I'm going to do now, called feelings. Well, I'm not going to give it a description, although I do recommend you do that. And then if I want to make I'm not doing it right to sit under feelings, I can right click on it, cut, click on feelings and paste. And I can now see this little plus button has come up, and now I am not doing it right comes under feelings. And the terminology that is used for these in NVivo is feelings is called a parent code, and I am not doing it right would be then a child code. And I can actually have a child code underneath I'm not doing it right as well if I so chose. I'm not actually sure whether there is a limit of how many child codes you can have. I've not tested it to a huge extent, but I've certainly done 3 or 4 levels before and found that very useful. And if you don't want to see that anymore, you can just minimize that. Okay. So, and the other thing is if we find that 2 codes are actually very similar to each other, we don't really have that here, but say we did, say that I decided that strategy and tasks were actually, I was coding pretty much the same thing to both. I could actually merge the codes by going cut and merge into selected code. Selecting OK, and then now everything that was under strategy is now under tasks, which you can now see in this box here, which I achieved by double clicking tasks. So this is a way that you can see what has actually been coded to each code. And the way it's presented is you have the file that it's come from. So this is from interview 1. You have the number of references coded and the amount of coverage, the percentage of coverage of that particular transcript that code covers. And you can see that again here. So because we coded I have an app to strategy, which I've now merged into tasks, that I have an app comes up here. And finally, to go back to the deductive, now that we have some code already set up for us, if I wanted to actually code back to those, it's quite simple. I'm going to find another strategy if I can. Actually, no, I'm going to go usually spend the first hour on admin tasks is daily routine. So I'm going to highlight that, go to code selection, and now I can see that I have these codes to choose from. I'm going to say daily routine and add selection to daily routine. So now you've seen how you can code either inductively straight from the text or deductively by coding back to pre-existing codes. Also shown you how you can look at what is coded to each code and how you can organize your codes by merging similar codes or adding codes as child codes under a sort of major parent heading. The final thing I've just realized that I said I would teach you and I haven't shown you yet is how you can look at the wider context of a code when you have it in this form here. So I have an app, may be explanatory, but it might be, what was I actually meaning? What was important about that particular bit? So what I can do to remind myself is, and instead of having to go back to the whole transcript, I can right click again and select spread coding. Then I have a choice of narrow context, which is just around the sort of sentence that particular code was in, or I can go for a broad context, which gives me the whole paragraph. So this helps me to look back and think, oh right, this is where this code comes from and the context of that code, which can be helpful sometimes. So I hope that was helpful for you and gave you a bit of an insight into different ways of coding with NVivo. And all the best with your projects. Take care. Bye.